It does not matter if you're running the most efficient heat pump on the market or have passive cooling engineered into every inch of your home. Your windows will still be the single biggest source of unwanted heat gain in summer and heat loss in winter. According to the Department of Energy's estimate, for every dollar you spend heating or cooling your home, as much as 30 cents of it leaks straight back out through your glass. But there's an easy fix to that. One that costs just $20 and is so effective it's been proven to cut a window's radiant heat loss by up to 50% in cold months and block as much as 80% of unwanted solar heat gain in the warm ones. Over the next few minutes, I'll share this simple trick with you, explain how it works, and how, with just a couple of hours, you can save hundreds on your energy bill every year. Now, before we get to how this actually works, it's important to understand why your windows are such a problem, because from a thermodynamic perspective, ordinary glass is an absolute energy disaster. Sunlight entering your house encompasses a broad spectrum of solar radiation, each with varying wavelengths. About 47% of that solar energy arrives as visible light, the part your eyes use to see. Ultraviolet, also known as UV, accounts for about 7%, while infrared accounts for around 46% of radiation. And it's that last one, infrared, that's creating somewhere between 25–30% of all unwanted heat gain in your house during these warmer months. And there are two distinct versions of this. Near-infrared is short-wave heat radiating straight off the sun. It passes through ordinary glass as easily as visible light, and it accounts for most of the solar heat that comes through a window on a hot day. Far infrared is the other kind. When that incoming energy lands on your couch, your floor, and your walls, those surfaces warm up and re-radiate it as long-wave heat, the same low, ambient warmth thrown off by a radiator or a wood stove. Because that long-wave heat cannot easily pass back out through the glass, it stays trapped inside. It is the same effect that warms a greenhouse. While in winter, the problem flips. With the same pane of glass to blame, your stove or furnace fills the room with that long-wave radiant heat, and rather than reflecting it back to you, the glass absorbs it, conducts it through the pane, and releases it to the cold air outside. Engineers measure this tendency with a number called emissivity, a material's willingness to radiate heat away. A perfect mirror sits at 0, while plain window glass sits at 0.84, meaning it sheds 84% of the heat it absorbs straight into the night air. Engineers have been wrestling with this for a long time. Glass windows first appeared roughly 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome. And for the next 1,500 years, the technology barely changed, a single, fragile sheet of silica that leaked heat almost as fast as it let in light. The first real attempt to fix some of these arrived in 1930, when an American inventor named C.D. Haven patented a design he called thermopane. Understanding that still air is an excellent insulator, he sealed a pocket of dry air between two panes. Over the next 2 decades, that double pane design became the residential standard, and it roughly halved the heat escaping through the glass. But it did nothing about the infrared radiation that caused unwanted heat gain. That problem went unsolved until the energy crises of the 1970s sent fuel prices climbing. During this energy crisis, a research program led by MIT and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory arrived at the same conclusion by placing a thin layer of silver inside the glass. While invisible to the eye, it was a near-perfect mirror to long-wave heat. This was the birth of low-emissivity glass, although it had its limitations. The silver coating is delicate and tarnishes the moment it meets open air, so it had to be sealed inside a brand-new factory window, which is why, for decades, the only way to get it was to buy new glass. Even today, replacing a single window would cost roughly $2,200. Making a full home replacement an exceedingly expensive venture. But what finally broke the technology out of the factory was a versatile version of that original idea, a durable polyester film carrying the same kind of microscopic metal layer built to survive on the room side surface of glass you already own. The film allows visible light to pass through, keeping both your view in daylight, while long, slow far infrared essentially hits a solid metal wall, while at the same time This same reflective film allows the radiant heat sources from inside the house to bounce back into the room instead of leaking out. In the process, the glass's emissivity drops from 0.84 to as low as 0.2. The window stops being a drain and becomes a thermal mirror. It's clear to your eyes, but acts as a reflective mirror to heat. Low-E film was a breakthrough that revolutionized the management of unwanted heat gain in homes. While new low-E coated window panes are excellent engineering, their high price tag means payback periods can run anywhere between 13 and 40 years. A film, on the other hand, made this same technology exponentially cheaper. The film itself costs as little as $2 per square foot, which means you can treat an entire home for a couple of $100s. By dropping the glass emissivity, a good film cuts winter radiant heat loss by 30 to 40% and blocks more than 60% of summer solar gain. The Department of Energy, which ranks low-E film among its top-tier conservation measures, ties that to a 15 to 20% reduction in annual heating and cooling energy. So instead of decades, the payback period averages 1 to 3 years. And with a decent film, you get roughly 80% of the thermal benefit of a new window for about 5% of the cost. Compared to other alternatives, E-film is one of the cheapest, least effort retrofits you can make. A heavy thermal curtain only works when it is drawn, which means trading away your daylight and your view for the insulation, and losing it the moment you open it. A film sits on the glass and works in both directions, every hour of every day, holding heat in through winter, turning solar gain away through summer, without a single second of effort on your part. Now, before we discuss how to apply this to your home, there's something important we need to talk about, because getting it wrong can turn a $20 upgrade into an expensive mistake. Cheap, untested film can crack your glass through a fault called a thermal stress fracture. When glass absorbs solar heat, it expands, but the edges of the pane sit buried in the cold frame and stay contracted. Put a dark, heat-absorbing film on the wrong window, and the center can climb past 140 degrees Fahrenheit while the edges stay cold. And that gap in expansion concentrates stress along the perimeter until the glass splits. It is also why most window makers void the glass warranty the moment an aftermarket film goes on. The fix is simply to match the film to the glass. Single-pane windows are the most forgiving, with no sealed air gap to trap heat. Standard double-pane windows are the most vulnerable, so they call for high transmission, silver-sputtered low-E films that reflect heat, rather than absorb it, avoiding dark, absorptive tints that absorb more than about 40% of the sunlight hitting it. Tempered glass, strengthened in manufacturing to as much as 4 times the strength of ordinary glass, handles almost anything. For anyone willing to work carefully, this is one of the most rewarding weekend retrofits there is. And it needs no power tools or technical skill on your part, just a steady hand and a little patience. First, start with a plan. The biggest returns come from your largest panes and the windows that take the most direct sun, usually those facing south and west, so prioritize those first. Then match the film to your climate. In a hot region, you want a solar control film with a low solar heat gain coefficient. That is the fraction of the sun's heat that it lets in, used to reflect the heat away. In a cold northern climate, you want the opposite. A high solar gain low-E film that maximizes the availability of free winter sun by day and locks the heat in once it sets. From there it comes down to 4-step installation process, and the first is the one most people skip. The enemy of a clean install is not bad adhesive. It is invisible contamination on the glass. Ordinary window cleaners leave silicone and ammonia residues that stop the film from bonding. So the glass instead gets cleaned with distilled water and a few drops of dye-free, scent-free baby shampoo, which lifts grime without leaving a residue of its own. You spray the pane. Scrape every inch with a fresh razor blade held at a shallow angle to lift the baked on debris your eyes cannot see, then squeegee it dry. Next, you cut the film on a clean, flat surface, leaving an inch of excess on all 4 sides as a margin for error. Then comes the trick that makes the whole thing exponentially easier. As you peel the protective liner, you soak both the glass and the film's adhesive with that same solution. The water temporarily deactivates the adhesive, floating the film on a thin cushion so you can slide it into position rather than fight it. Because applied dry, the adhesive grabs on contact and tears the instant you try to reposition it. With the film centered, you squeegee firmly from the middle outward in overlapping strokes, driving the trapped water and air out to the edges. Then you trim the excess with a fresh blade, leaving a deliberate 1/16 of an inch gap at the frame. That gap is invisible from a foot away, but it gives the last of the trapped moisture a path to evaporate over the 2 to 4 week cure. And it keeps the frame from grabbing and peeling the film as it expands and contracts through the seasons. Once it has cured, clean it only with a soft cloth and mild soap, nothing abrasive. A low-E film is nothing more than a layer of transparent metal, thinner than a human hair, laid onto glass you already own, that lets your light through while turning your heat back, converting an energy-wasting window into a thermal mirror for under 5% of the cost of replacing it. If you enjoyed this video and want to discover another low-cost trick to cooling your home, take a look at this video about ventilation here.